Hello from inside the Convention Center here in Indianapolis, home of the NFL Scouting Combine. I'm Phil Milani alongside Andrew Mason and Matt Boyer. We got a lot of news here today as we heard from both John Elway and Vic Fangio, some free agency news regarding Bradley Roby, Derek Wolfe, Emmanuel Sanders. We'll get to that in just a second, but Mace, let's start with you talking about the quarterback position. We heard John Elway in his press conference talk a lot about his philosophy regarding the Broncos quarterback position.
Yeah, really illuminating when he talked about what he's looking for. He was asked kind of about quarterbacks that are shorter, and he talked about, well, if you're a shorter quarterback, that means you have to work mostly in shotgun. And then he talked about how in order to have a good running game, you need to be able to operate under center and not simply under shotgun. It's something that he prefers, obviously. The offense that Rich Scangarello coming in out of the Mike Shanahan, Gary Kubiak tree certainly favors the quarterback working from under center. So you listen to that and you think, okay, someone like Kyler Murray, who could be 5'9", could be 5'10", may not be on the Broncos' radar if they choose to take a quarterback early in the draft, but then guys like Drew Lock, Daniel Jones, Dwayne Haskins do fit that bill in terms of height.
Yeah, it's very interesting. You talked to John Elway about how he wants the offense to evolve, but maybe he's not quite ready to evolve to the point where you're talking about a quarterback scrambling and running around kind of like a Kyler Murray.
Well, and certainly with a quarterback who's taller and working under center, you look at some of the offenses that you want the Broncos to get to. You take the Rams, for example. They're running a descendant of the Mike Shanahan offense, kind of like the Broncos are going to run this year. So it's not like those offenses haven't evolved and can't be dynamic for this era. It just shows that the type of quarterback he's looking for, a little more traditional.
John Elway was asked several times about the reported trade of Joe Flacco. Nothing obviously confirmed until the start of the new league year, but a lot of media out there reporting about the Joe Flacco trade, and he kind of surprised some people saying, hey, I'd like to keep Case Keenum if that does end up being the case.
Well, people were picking out teams for Case Keenum and where he was going to go next. He might not go anyplace, which is kind of encouraging if you think about what the Broncos want to do at the quarterback position. Of course, that's a lot of money if they don't restructure, so it's going to depend on. John did put the ball in Case's court as if to say, okay, it's going to be kind of up to him and his representation as to what they want to do next. The one thing I do think was most interesting about that, though, is if John is thinking about Joe Flacco and Case Keenum, he might not have the confidence, as Mace just mentioned, in this year's quarterback class. So something to think about, as I know people are already thinking about that 10 pick and which quarterback they're going to take. They might not take one because Case Keenum and Joe Flacco reportedly could be on the Broncos in 2019.
I think that you got to take a lot of this stuff with a grain of salt.
Right.
This free agency, draft, John isn't just going to come out here and tell everybody, okay, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I believe in. He's got to keep a little bit of a mystery still in there because at the end of the day, information is the name of the game.
Yeah, and also, things can change at the drop of a hat in the NFL, And the one thing I will say, you and I talked about it earlier off camera, the misinformation is flowing wild here.
Exactly.
I mean, it's really a game of cat and mouse when it comes to these GMs and what they want to do.
So it'll be interesting to just hear a little bit more about what the Broncos' plans are at the quarterback position. Let's get to some of the free agency news. Earlier in the day, we heard Vic Fangio talking about Emmanuel Sanders playing a major role next season for the Broncos, and they also expect him to be back at full speed.
Yeah, a good sign for Emmanuel Sanders, of course. I mean, you're talking about an Achilles injury, and that's a big injury, and it takes a while to come back from at the same time. I mean, I think back to, say, the 80s and 90s, an Achilles injury, you may never be the same, but now we're in 2019, and obviously the surgery has improved, the rehab techniques have improved. Great sign for the Broncos that they feel like Emmanuel Sanders is back on track. Also, him coming back. Derek Wolfe is another guy that John Elway mentioned. They're going to pick up the option on him, so he's back in the mix. That's a good sign for that defensive line. So you got two key parts, and I think with Emmanuel Sanders as well, it sort of takes receiver kind of off the front table in terms of free agency needs and really in terms of quality and in terms of that contract, because for a number one receiver, that contract Emmanuel Sanders has is really affordable. It's probably the best play for the Broncos, and they do need a wide receiver one. Emmanuel Sanders, he's the best fit to keep working with Deshaun Hamilton and Cortland Sutton.
Yeah, and John Elway was asked about Deshaun Hamilton and Cortland Sutton, said he expects them to take a leap here in season number 2. On the other side of that, Bradley Roby, Vic Fangio said, quote, we're going to see how the free agent market treats him. So they're going to let him go and test the waters.
But again, that's, seeing what's out there, because there's so much misinformation right now. There's so much that can happen between now and the beginning of free agency. So I do think that the Broncos, we talked about this earlier as well, they know what they have in Bradley Roby. They know how much, he can provide a team throughout a season, and they also probably know how much they want to pay him. And if that number isn't where Roby and his reps want it to be, they probably go their separate ways. But I do think the market will dictate a lot of that.
Well, the one thing we do know is that this coaching staff has come in here and done a self-evaluation and really examined the areas of need for this Broncos team. Maybe they evaluated Bradley Roby and thought, we have interest in him, but let's just see what the numbers play out to be.
And also, let's put 2 and 2 together. When John Elway spoke this afternoon, he talked about how this is a deep cornerback class, likes what's there, and maybe that's part of what's governing their thinking. They feel like that they could lose Bradley Roby, but at the same time could get some reinforcements from this draft class. It would surprise me if Bradley Roby moves on, if there's a free agent, but then also a high cornerback in the draft day 1 or day 2 to bolster that room.
We also said it, though, the free agent crop of DBs is also very, very deep. So not just the draft, but you could also get a veteran guy to come in and really bolster that group.
And not only veterans, but guys who are in Chicago who are available, who Vic Fangio knows very well, like Bryce Callahan at corner, Adrian Amos at safety.
Yeah, that is the one interesting thing, is that the Broncos will have to get players to execute this new system, Fangio's system, Scangarello's system. Be interesting to see how aggressive the Broncos are in free agency and then heading into the draft. So that's the big news here on day 1 from the Combine, but things actually really get heated up here on day 2 coming up tomorrow. Behind us, the bench press area will be live and active. Mace might get in a few reps.
I'll be happy to get one, but we're going to be watching the offensive linemen working out, and there'll probably be some impressive bench press numbers. Looking forward to seeing what a guy like Dalton Reisner, a guy that we saw down at the Senior Bowl from Wiggins, Colorado, would love to be a Bronco. Look forward to seeing what Dalton can do up there tomorrow.
You gonna throw some racks around?
Yeah, I can get 25 with just the bar.
Yeah,
just
the bar,
just the
not
bar.
225.
Just the bar. Yeah.
Got it.
I know you're throwing up the 225 though.
Exactly.
All
That's
that
sort of
grunting we hear.
sort of a normal couple reps here for me. That's interesting. Seeing what they'll be able to do here tomorrow at the NFL Combine. We'll start to hear from some of them as they make their appearance at the podium. Get to see what their thoughts are heading into this draft process. All right, that's going to do it for us. For Andrew Mason, Matt Boyer, I am Phil Milani, coming to you from inside the the convention
Indiana
center,
Convention Center
in Indianapolis,
the home of the 2019 NFL Scouting Combine.